Share via email. Report story. By Faint Blue Ivy. Chapter 1. Chaos. Utter chaos. It was the only way to describe the scene in front of him. The kitchen was littered with utensils of all shapes and sizes. The girls of their class were messing around in the kitchen wearing personal aprons, and most boys were hoarding the entrance, as Yaoyorozu-san had strictly established a plaque saying, "Trespassing will be a punishable offense." The curiosity of boys had skyrocketed when a laughing Siro-kun reminded everyone that it was February 14th tomorrow. And for a moment there was a wave of pin-drop silence before everything erupted, which included boys bubbling with activity, tantrums, and even boasts. And well, a literal microwave. Ashido-san. Yaoyorozu's panicked scream rang through the hall, effectively stopping everyone. Out of curiosity, the boys attempted another chance at peeking, which failed miserably when Jiro slid open the door, raised a jack menacingly at them, especially Kaminari, who was at the front, and loudly declared, "Yaomomo asked you to stay outside. Didn't you hear? Want me to repeat? All right, listen, you morons. If you make another worthless attempt to peek again, I'll make sure that none of you'll get those chocolates. None." She swirled around, entered the room, and slammed the door right on their faces, shutting the nosy throng of boys outside the kitchen. Sato, my friend, you're making some chocolates too, aren't you? You'll share some with me, right?" Jiro said she won't. At Kaminari's bullying, Sato smiled sheepishly. "Dude, I'm sorry, I didn't even remember that it was Valentine's." Haha. At Sato's denial, Kaminari fell into deep depression, and Izuku found himself sweat dropping at his classmates' antics. It was a good thing that Iida was not here, because Izuku was sure that the guy would definitely have had a heart attack by now. In less than a few minutes the kitchen entrance was empty, with the exception of Mineta and Kaminari, who were still trying to peek into the kitchen through the slight gap in the edges of the gate. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck, ready to see some explosions, when Kacchan stood there glaring at the two of them. But surprisingly none came. He muttered a "tch" and left back to his room. There was slight tension between them, but it was slowly swirling away. And Izuku was undeniably glad about it. He understood that he could never become friends with Kacchan, but being his rival meant a lot to Izuku. Speaking of friends, where was Uraraka-san? It was then out of sudden his brain flashed the information that she was at her internship today. Unlike a lot of them, Uraraka-san worked the most number of days, because more days meant more money, which would help her to depend less on her parents' money. Izuku felt a twist in his gut to thinking about his classmate, no, his friend. She actually works the hardest among them, eats least, and still manages to smile like the brightest sun, no matter what. And Izuku had always admired that beautiful quality of hers. "I'm home." The sound of her voice, as clear as the day, bounced off the walls of the large hall, and Izuku almost jumped. It was startling to hear the object of your thoughts out of nowhere. But Izuku turned his head to welcome her, only to feel a weird, bubbling sensation in his chest at her large grin and pink cheeks. Her disheveled hair bounced when she jumped beside him on the couch. The cause definitely seemed like her helmet. Promoted stories. You'll also like. Finished. 8.3K 508 tilde. He save all of them, just a smile plastered on his face before disappearing through the wind. Izuku's Harem Academia 183K 1.7 Qst. Read. Hurt cuz I love you to death, Izuocha. Ha. 8.6K 141 Class 1A is now Class 2A and is working to be better heroes due to events that had happened before. Deku has gotten strong feelings toward Uraraka during the summer, as Convicted Hearts 3390. Like my other story, but ILI longer. Much needed love. Yandere Succubus Momo X Izu 49.9K 766 after Wattpad. had decided to delete this story out of nowhere. I and many reader were distraught. So I'm making a remake of the story from the ground up to compensate. I am, sequel of, UR check mark 69.4K 1.8K. This book is the sequel of, UR, so better read that first before going here. Tears of joy, tears of joy. Thank you to that one reader that suggested this title. I can't see you sad face, but thank you. Feelings, Izawa. Ex-reader 57.1K 1.3K RE posting. This until I edited, sorry if it's not good, it's my first time writing a story. You enroll at UA and you have multiple quirks you are really good at using, why? Whatcha doin', Deku-kun? She peeked at his half-finished English assignment and gasped out. Oh no, I didn't remember it all. Calm down, Uraraka-san. Last date for submission is day after yesterday. Really, really. He found himself chuckling at her wide eyes and she too burst into a fit of laughter followed by him and they turned into a giggling mess. By the way, Deku-kun. Where is Iida-kun? Ah, he had some class representative stuff to look after. Oh, where is Suyu-chan? Deku tilted his head in the direction of kitchen. There. What? Kitchen? Why? Ochako asked, jumping up from her seat and narrowing her eyes on Mineta and Kaminari who were still trying to peep inside the kitchen. Izuku smiled. Apparently, the other girls are preparing for the Valentine's Day. It's tomorrow, right? And Izuku immediately stiffened with alarm as all the color drained off his companion's face. She almost looked white. Uraraka-san, are you alright? You were not hurt in today's mission, were you? Deku-kun. I think I should'll leave and just finish off my English assignment. I'll see ya later, K. She almost yelled before running up the stairs frantically, and did not even answer his question. Izuku was just left staring into the space she once occupied, contemplating if there was something he had said wrong. The next day arrived with a fresh morning and Izuku could even feel love in the air. Last night on dinner table, he was told that Valentine's is not only for couples but also for friends. Girls give obligatory chocolates to all the boys they're close to, even platonically. Well, to be honest, it was not surprising that he didn't know about the tradition that it can be for a friend as well. He had never gotten any before. Not wallowing in self-pity, Izuku dressed up in his uniform, brushed his hair, of course to no avail, and ran downstairs to grab something to eat. It was only on the breakfast table, after Iida pointed out that she was not here. Suyu-chan, is Uraraka-kun running late today? Iida questioned, as he gestured at the empty seat beside them. Ah, Ribbit, Ochako-chan will not be attending the class today. Iida-chan. She's sick, should we check upon her? Before leaving, unable to hide his worry for his friend, Izuku half-heartedly bit on his bread. Don't worry Midoriya-chan, Ochako-chan will be fine later. She asked me to specifically tell you both to not worry about her. Both Izuku and Iida shared a troubled glance with another. But as they were getting late, they decided to check upon her after their return. This Valentine's was incredibly different for Izuku than it ever had been. He received 2 sets of chocolates. One from Yaoyorozu-san who had made a box for everyone in the class and other one was from Suyu-chan. Izuku had happily, gratefully accepted their offerings and felt himself almost sob at the moment. The class was in uproar after Jiro flung a box of chocolates at Kaminari with a red face and Mineta was crying about the unfairness of everyone else receiving chocolates but not him. Bakugo exploded and Kirishima was trying to hold him back when Ishido pulled a prank on him. But a part of him still registered the absence of a certain girl the entire day. When they returned back to the dorms, he almost stepped towards her room when Suyu-chan went past him. Suyu-chan. Yes, Midoriya-chan. He shuffled slightly before making a slight request. Can you check upon Uraraka-san for me? Definitely. I'll text you later. Izuku nodded with a smile on his face and rushed to his room. It was dinner time when Izuku seriously started worrying. Because once again, Ochako Uraraka was absent from the dinner table. And of course, Iida-kun had noticed too. Suyu-chan, is Uraraka-kun really okay? Yes, she's fine, Iida-chan. Just a little sick. As Izuku gobbled the last bit of rice on his bowl, he stood up, determined. He needed to see her, to make sure that she was fine. She always had his back when he needed to lean on someone. She worried about him when he broke his bones. She cheered him up when he felt down. What kind of friend would he be if he didn't even check upon her? I'm taking her dinner to her room. He grabbed a plate of food and was about to step up the stairs when Ida's voice reached him. Midoriya-kun, wait, I'm coming too. I refuse to fail myself and Uraraka-chan by not even coming to see her. It would be shameful on my part as a friend and even as class representative. Izuku felt a grin come over his face. That's Iida-kun for you. They both stared at the door of Uraraka's room and then at each other before Iida raised a fist to knock on the door. There was slight shuffling inside the room as a familiar voice filtered through the door. Suyu-chan, is that you? I'm coming. Before either of them could open their mouth to announce their presence, the door swung open to reveal her in pajamas. Deku-kun, Iida-kun. She looked shocked at their presence here and then her eyes slowly traveled to the plate of food he held. We were worried about you being sick and well. We thought we'll bring you some food and check upon you as well. Izuku offered her a lame explanation. She stared at them for a few more seconds before her brows twisted into a frown and tears gathered at the corner of her eyes. You Uraraka-kun, Iida exclaimed, quite alarmed as she rubbed her eyes furiously. Her lip wobbled before she burst out crying. Izuku almost jumped up to her but then she said something they had never imagined. I'm sorry, I'm such a horrible friend. So here's why both him and Iida were in her room, food gone cold, still trying to convince her that it was okay. She hasn't done anything wrong. No, you don't understand. She blew her nose on the handkerchief he had offered her. All right then explain, Uraraka-kun. Why do you think you're a horrible friend? There was a moment of silence before she told them, averting her gaze to the side. I lied. I wasn't sick or anything. Just a little sore and tired after yesterday's mission. It's completely valid Uraraka-kun. Resting after a hard day, there's nothing wrong about that. Izuku vehemently nodded his head in agreement. Yes Uraraka-san, Iida-kun is right. Look, you're the one who works the hardest among all of us. You deserve a day or two of rest. You've been really working hard, you know. Ochako stared at them for a few more seconds before looking even more ashamed. And Izuku felt incredibly uneasy. They were trying to cheer her up, not make her feel even worse. No, that's not it, she whispered. Then what is? Izuku was not even sure who had asked the question, him or Iida. His eyes were solely trained on hers, trying to decipher the cause of her turmoil. It's just that you two are my closest friends ever. And Valentine's is a day of expressing your thankfulness to the important people in your life, right? But well, I felt guilty for not getting you both chocolates. There was a heavy silence midst them, both him and Iida staring at her with their jaws open. You were worried about that, Iida yelled scandalously. Arg, it sounded much better in my head. She complained and stared down at her feet in shame as Iida continued lecturing her. But the way she wrung her hands and bit her lower lip, Izuku understood that her thoughts were much deeper than what it looked like. It was not about getting them anything, it was more about not being able to gift them something in par with what they had received from Suyu-chan and Yaoyorozu-san. and Izuku felt a foul taste build up in his throat. Uraraka-san had never felt ashamed of her financially compromised status. In fact, she admired her parents for giving her the life they have. But when compared to the affections that can be measured in the terms of comfort and money in amongst her peers, she felt a little uncomfortable. Did she feel inferior to them because of this? As soon as the thought struck, he felt an incredible urge to assure her that they were not the ones who'd helped him as a stranger when they barely knew anything. They were not the ones offer him their points in the entrance exam. They were not the ones to smile blindingly and accept him as a companion, as a friend on the first day of the school. They were not the ones trusted him unconditionally in dire situations. They were not the ones who cheered on for him even when they had lost and felt hurt. They were not the ones who had torn their shirt apart just to splint his broken arms. They were not the ones to jump in to save him without a second thought when his quirk had went haywire. And they were not the ones who gave him his hero name. If friendship was just offering some expensive chocolates, then did they share something even greater? But he could not allow her to feel anything even remotely similar to this because she deserved much more than that. Say Uraraka-san, he called her out tentatively, forcing both her and Iida-kun's gaze whip on him. Her brown eyes still shined with the tears held back, and he wanted nothing more than to stretch out his hand and wipe the ones that had cascaded down her cheeks. How about we share that? He pointed to a jar of candies. He remembered her buying them when they had visited the mall market a while ago. She had been happy to get them because they were on sale that day. He remembered Hagakure-san saying that they didn't taste that good, but Uraraka-san had smiled and claimed that after a long day of work and training, something is always better than nothing. But they don't taste that good, she mumbled under her breath, eyeing the jar with dissension. Iida-kun immediately jumped upon the chance, easily grasping at the straws of the situation. Everything tastes better when you're with your friends, you know that, Uraraka-kun. The smile that she gave them in return left him gobsmacked. So bright, so damn overwhelmingly warm that his chest thudded loudly in his ears. She returned back with the jar in her hands and they feasted on them together. Some of the candies contained weird shapes and funny messages. They'd read them out loud and laugh at how cheesy and hilarious some of them were. And the tense atmosphere from previously slowly dissipated into the familiar comfort that they had always sensed when being with each other. When the night came to an end, they stood at her door, almost bidding farewell when she gave them a shy smile, offered them something. 2 hearts. She offered one to Iida-kun. He could not see what the heart said, but the way Iida's eyes softened and he looked up at her, giving her one of the softest smiles, made Izuku genuinely happy. Uraraka-kun, thank you, and I think of you as my closest friend as well. She gives him a smile and a tilt of nod and then looks at him. Izuku's insides squirmed at her glazing brown eyes. She stretched her hand and offered him a candy as well. Let's be best friends forever. The message was loud and clear. And Izuku had never wanted anything more. Chapter 2. Numb. Mindlessly numb. It was the only thing he could feel at the moment. His body felt lethargic as he dragged himself into the room. Today, even the sight of the All Might merchandise he had collected all over the years could do nothing to cheer him up. He ripped his shirt off his body and threw it in a corner of the room, and fell face first onto the bed. And the tears that he had been keeping at bay for a while now rolled down his face as he buried himself in the sheets even further. Today was Valentine's, the last one that the class had celebrated together as students. It was their 3rd year of UA and most of them were going to be separated, moving on to get new jobs and focusing on building up their careers as pro heroes. And today was also the day when he made one of the most important persons in his life cry. Deku-kun. He looked up from his notes, ears already perked up cause he could recognize her voice in the midst of their rackety class easily. Uraraka-san, he asked, his lips curling into a familiar smile that would always be a witness of their conversations. But something was off. He had always been a little more observant than necessary, so of course, he did see how her hands fisted on the hem of her skirt and how her eyes darted around. The smile on her lips seemed a little forced too, a bad attempt at trying to hide the nervousness that rolled off from her in waves. "Are you okay?" she squeaked and waved her hands around. I am fine, Deku-kun. Fine." The wild hand gestures of her hands melted down and she just twiddled her thumbs. "I was wondering if you'd come with me to the rooftop of the dorm today evening." "Yeah, it's no big deal." Izuku gave a reassuring smile which she gleefully returned and trotted back over to her desk. Despite his habits of overanalyzing things, he had never thought much about her request. They were close enough to not think of anything when something was requested by the other. And it was a big mistake. Or maybe not, because nothing could have prepared him for the scene of Uraraka gracing him with an utterly mesmerizing smile and a red heart-shaped candy which said, "I like you." His jaw had slackened and his heart beating erratically. His thoughts raced 1,000 miles per minute, but still he could not form any coherent thought. WWH, a measly stupid mumbling escaped his lips, but she cut him off. "Yes, Deku-kun, I feel this way about you. Romantically. You have inspired me so much. You've made me want to become this hero who could fight for what is right. You have made me want to become a hero who wants to save other heroes who are in pain, who are lost. I want to rescue people. I want to be Uravati. And you've helped me become her." The silence that followed after was even louder than Jiro's amplified heartbeats that could topple down even buildings. No, no, he cannot do this to her. No, not when the League of Villains are still out there, ready to pounce and wreck him. Not when they're still trying to hunt down powerless All Might and destroy the peace of the hero society. Not when he still has 1/4 of his quirks left, master. He had already endangered her life several times before. And if they get any closer than they already were, then... No, he had already pushed Kachan in danger. He could not do this to her. She's strong, but she deserves better than this. Better than a quirkless abomination of boy burdened with 6 extra quirks and self-destructive stockpiled power. So he opens his mouth, but the wobbly smile on her face and her knowing melancholic eyes shut him up instantly. "It's okay, Deku-kun. I understand. There are other things you need to worry about, and trust me, I don't want to be an hindrance on your path." That was the last conversation they had before she dashed away and he was left there, heart fractured into million pieces. Because he was not an idiot. He knew what he felt for her. Yes, he had started as dense, but he understood that what he had with her was not what he had with anyone else. After all, nobody's else's smile made his heart thrum in happiness the way hers did. But now it burned. It burned like hell. He had never known when he had slipped into a fitful sleep on his bed, but he did wake up in the wee hours of morning and laid there contemplating of what would become of them now. That's when his eyes fell on a piece of paper on the floor which looked like it had been slipped through under his door. And it read, "Deku-kun, if you're worrying about us, then don't. Nothing has changed. I still want to be your friend and support you to the best of my ability. As much as I want to say that I want you to forget this, I won't. Because it's a lie. Because I always want you to remember that you're amazing. That I will always be that person to remind you that it's incredible how you've become the Deku, the hero Deku. Sincerely, Uravati." Izuku clutched the paper tightly and cried even more because he should be the one worrying about her, not the other way round. But When has Uravati followed the universal rules? And true to her promise, ever since they had begun their separate careers as pro-heroes, for 6 years, he would always receive a candy heart on every Valentine's saying, "I like you," from an anonymous sender. But even though his popularity increased and the number of gifts and chocolates he was loaded with became enormous, he still found that candy heart always. The rest of the presents were sent to orphanages, only and only that one was the gift he took home with him. Somewhere along the way, that particular present was the only one he waited for. And hated himself more than anything for it. Chapter 3. Red. All red. It was the 14th of February. The day of love. In red, heart-shaped decorations were spread all over. But the red Izuku looked at the moment was not the color of the love, but red, the color of hatred and danger. Blood spilled on the streets and the mass of rubble was the sight. It was wide-scale terrorist attack. And after a heavy confrontation with the group and long struggle that ended for quite a few hours, Izuku felt exhausted and broken. Obviously, his limbs were broken. After having saved a civilian from the direct hit by the head terrorist, his femur had cracked. And the battle later ended up with his right cracked. The pain didn't feel severe at that moment because of the adrenaline, but now, it just blazed and hurt. Beyond imagination, he gritted his teeth as his eyes flicked over to Kachan, whose hands were laced with third-degree burns from the countless explosions he had set off in his battle against the villains. And on his other side was Shoto. He was suffering from severe hypothermia and fever at the same time. And the doctors ran frantically back and forth between the three of them. Iida-kun and others were still running around, trying their best to rescue as many people as they could from the rubble of the shattered buildings. Yes, they had already cleared off the area of the initial danger, the terrorists. But there was still much saving to be done. It was later, when all three of them were out of danger and moderately healed, when Izuku stepped out of the camp in crutches. His heart dropped at the scenario. Children were crying, elders were moaning, and even though the loss of lives was kept to minimal, the pain of losing their homes must have been terrifying. And Izuku felt an incredible need to approach each one of them and apologize personally for all the emotional trauma they had to go through. It was then his eyes fell onto Ochako. She was coming from the other side, her quirk floating a bunch of people who looked quite injured and body supporting that of a pregnant woman. She handed off her charges to the medical support team and talked to them for a while, explaining the condition of every person under her wing. Her helmet was nowhere to be found, and there was a large gash over her shoulder, running down to the length of her arm. Her clothes were ripped, revealing patches of skin here and there was a bandage wrapped around her middle. And that's when he remembered that the doctors were talking about it when he was in a painful haze. Quote, Uravati was shot by a terrorist when she was conducting rescue. What? She apprehended him and thankfully the bullet had just grazed her side. But it was bleeding and she refused to have anything more than the first aid, saying that people might die if she stays here more. God, heroes like these are incredible. As the memories came back, his mouth twisted in displeasure. She needed to get healed or the injury would stretch even more. So he wobbled up to her, calling her out. Uraraka-san, Deku-kun. He turned to him and her eyes registered his condition. She opened her mouth to say something but he beat her to it. You need to get healed. At least something more than those blood-stained bandages. She looked to the side guiltily but followed him anyway when he fixed a stern glare at her. It was a while after when she got her wound stitched and semi-healed, deciding that she would return back to the duty. When the doctor insisted that she needed to rest, she just smiled and told him that she was one of the few lesser injured heroes and that is why she needs to get out, save as many people as she possibly can. And Izuku could easily detect the immense respect and admiration in Doctor's eyes for her. He knew that look cause he looked at her the same way. He was sitting in the corner of a room, trying to comfort a crying child whose mother was getting treatment and he was getting dragged away as well for checking up on injuries. It was soon after Ochako approached, smiling slightly. Before I return back to the duty, I had to give you this. She pulled out a small box from somewhere beneath her uniform and gave it to him. Nodding in his direction, she left back to rescue. To save people is Uravity. And when he opened the box, the date smacked him straight in the face. It was again a candy heart. But the words were different this time. I love you. And suddenly he realized how stupid he had been all these years. And how incredibly hypocritical his own thoughts were. Consciously, he had wanted her to stop liking him, but at the same time, he desperately craved for her affection, of assurance that he was still someone who could be liked, or rather loved. But these three words, here, they burned through his soul. They reminded him of what Ochako looked up at, and here he was, a coward, who has been making up excuses and running away from that one speck of astounding happiness that she was offering him. An idiot, indeed, no denying that now. So when the March 14th rolled around, he drove to her apartment in the middle of the night, in his hero costume because he had a night shift starting in an hour. She opened the door in her pajamas, looking very sleepy, hair disheveled and the sleeve of the top slipping down her shoulder. And Izuku sucked in a breath. Damn, has she always been this beautiful? Yes, she has been. But before today, he had deliberately ignored the thundering of his heartbeat. Yes, moron. Now remember what you came here for. A voice that suspiciously sounded of Kachan echoed in his head as he stepped inside cautiously. She tilted her head in that adorable confusion when he thrusted a box in her direction. She opened it, eyeing him every now and then, but gasped loudly at the item held inside the box. D Deku-kun, she breathed out, and the tears collected in the edges of her large beautiful eyes. Her lip quivered as he nodded, though they did spill down her cheeks when he knelt in front of her with a velvet box in hand. It had taken him years to come to this conclusion. She had waited for him for years, expecting, desiring, nothing in return. Her love was just a reminder for him to love the person he had become. All of those other confessions he received from his fans and other admirers. They loved the hero Deku. But she loved the boy who had become Deku. For someone who gave him so much without ever asking for remittance was someone who deserved even more than what hero Deku could offer. She deserved a promise. She deserved the world for her bright smile, kindness and tenacity. God, he couldn't believe he had been lying to himself for so long. Yes, he loved Ochako Uraraka with every cell of his being, because how can you not love someone who made you the person that you've become proud of, because your every achievement is a reminder of their accomplishment in making you love yourself. That is why, he understood her now. He knew it. As long as he would love himself and the hero Deku, he was going to love her. And that is why, for both to their sakes, he'll love himself forever. End. Where stories live. Discover now.